A lot of good comments had been posted on the previous video, and I decided for this one to go into the numbers, and I have actually taken some measurements for the first time, so I can give you some very precise numbers as to how various gear configurations can work out if you own a Brompton and what your options are. First and foremost, one important correction. As some people noted, Sturmey Archer went bankrupt in 2000, but they were never actually purchased by Brompton. Instead, the trademarks and whatever assets they had were sold to a Taiwanese company calling itself Sunrace. The fact that they did not continue operations in England is clear evidence that they went bankrupt. They basically only had the brand in whatever hardware they had to sell. Now, there is definitely some kind of a close relationship or unholy alliance between Brompton and Sturmey, because Sturmey is not only making all of their internal hubs, but even some other hardware as well that goes onto the Brompton frames. And if Brompton changed the rear triangle just a little bit, enlarging it just a little bit in this most recent release of the new titanium and titanium steel frames, they would have opened up competition from Shimano, which a lot of us would have liked to see, maybe even to Roloff. They could have done that as well, but they did not. So they are protecting this market, the Brompton market, and reserving it to Sturmey. So this is all I wanted to say about the Sturmey Archer hub. If you want to fit a Shimano hub, there is an Alpine hub that can be kind of forced in. It's maybe 2 or 3 millimeters larger than the triangle, but can be forced in. This video is not going to be about that hub. If you want to get the king of all hubs, then you need to upgrade the triangle, get an aftermarket piece, and the roll-off hub will fit into that. But again, that's going to be another video. In my previous video, I made use of charts I copied from a YouTube channel called 2 Bikes for Adventure. This is an excellent channel. You should subscribe, and I'm providing a link below. I think I forgot to do that last time. It was not intentional. In any case, they have provided very detailed numbers on the various configurations you can buy from the Brompton company, and I am going to compare those in this video to the measurements I have taken. I'm not going to worry too much about the lower end of the gear range because I built my machine, the Interceptor, mainly for speed, to have a pocket rocket that would outrun any and every road bike on the greenway. So the 6-gear set that my bike came with in 2017 is the one you see in the second row from the bottom. And you see that the gear range goes up to about 100, but that's because the external gear, the smallest wheel, was a 12 cog gear, and I changed that to an 11 cog. And the latest of what Brompton is offering, the combined gear with the 4-speed derailleur and the old Sturmey Archer hub, also comes with an 11 cog gear, that is the smallest one. So with that, they increased the gear inches from 100 to 120. That's a 20% increase you're getting just by moving the cogs from 12 to 11. So it should show you what you can do by changing the cassette just a little bit. And you can take apart a cassette and say you could go from where they are. The biggest one I think is 18. You don't have to go to 42. That would probably not fit. But if you have trouble climbing, if you live in an area or ride in an area where there are hills, you may want to experiment and possibly swap out the biggest gear from an 18 to say a 24 or a 28 and see how that works. But back to my own setup, basically my own setup then would have gone up to 120 using a 50-tooth chainring. Now I upgraded the 50-tooth chainring as well, not realizing that I was already at 120, and I thought that if I would upgrade to a 60, then I might be at 120, which is pretty much all you want. And what I wanted with my 2017 Brompton Interceptor setup was to compete with any of the road bikes out there. So if you look at a high-end road bike, look at their specs. These are bikes costing at $5,000-$6,000. So this is not garbage. You'll see that they go up. The chainring is maximum 52, the cassette minimum 11. So you go to the calculator. I'm on Bike Calc, and I'm going to give you the link below in the description. So 52 with an 11 sprocket in the rear, that would give them 129 gear inches. So not much better than what I thought where I was with my own build, and it's not much faster than the currently available Brompton 12 speed. So those are good speeds, but I made some further changes to be faster than this. Although I never actually measured it. The first time I measured my own gear inches was this weekend, when some discussion about the numbers came up as a result of the video. And here you can see my setup. You can see the 62th chain wheel in the front. It is absolutely massive, and probably the largest chain wheel that you can buy that's mass produced, so you don't have to pay for custom manufacturing. I think I paid $50 for it a few years back. I don't think it's much more expensive right now, and I have seen other people using the same chain wheel as well on Bromptons, so I know they are floating around somewhere on the internet. Measuring the gear inches, which I'd never done before, was not easy because my measuring tape itself only goes up to 70 whatever. So I had to put down dumbbells, and that's how I measured it. And I measured it twice just to make sure, and you'll be shocked at the numbers. The number actually comes out to 148 gear inches, and that you measure by pointing the crank arm 90 degrees straight down and turn the crank around 360 degrees once. Make sure that the bike is not freewheeling or slipping, lest you screw up the numbers. And I came up a little over 148, so I'm rounding it down, but this is actually the number I'm getting. And I was amazed. I always thought I would do maybe 120 or so. Apparently my gear inches are far beyond even the average road bike, even an average pretty expensive road bike, that is. And here is an actual video, one of my very first videos. I apologize for it being such low res, but this was done with a cheap camera before the GoPro era. You see that the road bike passes me, and then I pass him, and you see how much he has to pedal trying to catch up. And not only that, he doesn't have the speed, and he definitely does not have the torque to be able to catch up with me. But I am pedaling very casually, and he's pumping it a little bit more. So if he has 120 something gear inches, maybe 130. I never thought of that back then, but I definitely do have a little bit more. You can go into my playlist area, and there is a playlist called Humiliations, where I have a whole bunch of videos from the early days, like 2019, and so you see how fast he's pedaling. So he's really not, he doesn't have either the power or the gear inches to overtake me. And even this speed is something he can only sustain for a few minutes. So you can see that he's sustaining it, but at the end of the video, he actually falls back. He gives up after a few minutes of really trying. Even though this guy is a really fit guy, and he's not the only one who tried to catch up with me. I've made several videos, and some of those videos have been posted on this channel, but you can see that he slowly realizes that it's not going to happen, and I come to the end of my journey, and that's it. Getting back to the chart, according to the number on this chart, the maximum on the new 12-speed Brompton would be 120 gear inches at 52, and I increased that by 20% to 60 teeth, and that would be 144 gear inches, and I measured 148. So there is a difference of 4 gear inches, which is like 2.5%, less than 3%. So there's not a lot of difference. There's not much of a discrepancy. The thickness of my tire may play a role. Maybe there's a slight inaccuracy, either the way I measured it or maybe in the chart, but this is under 3%, so I think it's actually very accurate, a chart to use for calculations. And so here you can see what you can get with various configurations. I would say if you have a steel or electric Brompton, first of all, if you have an electric, you're never going to go much faster than the speed limit, which is 15. So you shouldn't be worried about the upper gears at all. If it's only for climbing and average riding, I think that the smallest gear, I would just use the hub gear, really. The hub gear, the 3-speed, with a small chain wheel, and even removing the if you have a 4-speed derailleur, remove that. I removed mine. I have a single speed derailleur. It's not a derailleur, it's just a tensioner, really. So for the rear I'm only using the hub gear, and for the front I have the 62. Because of my electric support, I don't need to worry about the lower gears and climbing, because I can just switch up to 500-600 watts, and that takes care of it. Now if you have to climb and if you have no electric motor, definitely if it's a steel-based Brompton, even if it's just partly steel, I would go with the hub gear, and I might downsize on the chain wheel. Now, if you want to go for maximum speed, then I would do the opposite. You can get the 62 chain wheel I have, and just use the 4-speed derailleur that Brompton sells you. It's not going to give you 148, but it's going to give you, can it give you 120? You have to test it. If it's still not enough, there's not much you can do without a hub set, because the hub gears are the only way to spin a very small wheel, like a 16-inch wheel, fast enough to be able to keep up with the road bikes. Much bigger 28-inch rim. If you have a lightweight Brompton frame, if you already spend $5,000-$6,000 getting the weight down below 20 pounds, say it weighs 17 pounds or whatever, it would be foolish to add a hub gear set, because that's going to add another 1.5 or 2 pounds of weight. So for those kind of applications, if you're not happy with the original cassette, you can try to modify it. If you ride in a hilly area, then climbing is going to be most important. So you may want to swap out one of the sprockets. Maybe instead of an 18, try a 24 or 28 tooth sprocket. These cassettes and sprockets are not expensive, so I think you should disassemble it and play around. Another option you have is what you see here. You can just get a better chain wheel. I think at $143, this brand name high quality dual chain wheel is really not a bad deal. You can also get a shifter for the front. Many people have installed it for the Brompton. The difference between 33 and 54 is a huge difference. It's more than a 50% up from 33. So it should make a huge difference. If you install one of these, that should help you with the 4-speed to do both the climbing and the higher speeds. Now, if you don't do much of any climbing, then you can just buy the same chainring I have, which is the 60 tooth, and just concentrate on the speed with a little bit of variability from the derailleur. Or you can even do a single speed setup. This is a good looking chain wheel. You can also do a single speed setup and just go as fast as you can and not have any kind of cumbersome gear systems either in the front or the rear. So these are your options, and this is all I have to say. If you guys can do some measurements, actual measurements on your bikes at home, and post some numbers as to how many gear inches you can measure on various Brompton setups, that would be really appreciated, and I'm sure most of the other viewers of this channel would want that as well. This is it for the current video. I hope you all get to update and modify your bikes to give the road bikes on the greenways a really hard time. And I'll be back with the next video in a few days.